there was one key thing that you think businesses can do to become more diverse and inclusive, what would it be?
Yeah, so you guys always want the silver bullet, and unfortunately, it's not there. I'm going to say two, if I could. So, firstly, I think it is about having senior leadership really buying into this agenda and leading it. I think, secondly, you've got to take your thoughts and ideas and really move those into action. And I'm really pleased and proud that at Vodafone, over the last few years, we've taken two big decisions that have led to action. One was the global maternity policy in 2015, where we were the first company in the world to have one policy that went across our 30 markets. And then in 2017, when we launched Reconnect, which was the largest global program bringing 1,000 women back into the workplace. So I think we need to talk about diversity and inclusion, but big companies particularly also need to put that into action.
The one thing I'd tease out from today is to really make sure that we understand there's no one right answer. What we're looking for is what works locally, what works in the culture. Set the agenda from the corporate perspective, but make sure that you implement locally.
I would pick the talent pipeline, working with schools and young diverse people to give them the confidence and the aspiration to join companies like us.
I think there's a massive leadership challenge to make our workplaces more inclusive, and not just about leadership but confident leadership. So helping leaders talk about these issues, whether it's LGBT diversity or diversity around black and minority ethnic or gender, whatever it is, people need to be able to talk about it. So creating spaces for conversations for leaders and others, just be themselves and talk about diversity and inclusion. That's the biggest change I think I'd like to see.
The single most important thing that drives greater inclusivity, in my view, is leadership. And I don't just mean the leaders at the top, I mean top to bottom of organisations. Believing it matters, being relentless in trying to move it forward, and accountability running throughout the organisation.
To kind of break down what is societally not normal, so to kind of normalise different races being in the workplace, different sexuality, all these different orientations, and really kind of allow people to talk about who they are and how they feel and what their background is, and get people to open up about those kind of things and make it normal to have conversations around why people are different and how that benefits each other to find out what those people are like.
If I could pick one thing that businesses could do to become more diverse and inclusive, it would be to collect the data and understand where they stand today on race, on gender, on disability and on other areas, and actually build a 5-year plan with aspirational targets to see how they can improve the diversity of their own organisations.
For me, I think there's still so much work to be done, but I think underpinning all of that and to keep the rate of progress going, transparency is the most important thing. So I would ensure that basically every organisation is sufficiently focused on it and they keep asking themselves the questions, how are we doing? Keep looking at the data, keep collating the data, keep asking yourselves the questions as to what you can do to keep making progress incrementally, month on month, year on year.
The one thing that businesses can do to be more inclusive and diverse, in my opinion, is to really understand their workforce and start talking to their workforce, because very often the diversity lies within the business. It just needs to be untapped, listened to, and then from today's fantastic session, frankly, actioned.
It was touched on today a little bit about how we can really harness the full potential of being diversity and inclusion by listening to the water cooler chat. Often the best talent is under your nose. By really engaging your whole organisation in what it means to be an inclusive leader and looking at behavioural change from the top floor to the shop floor is the one way that you can really harness the full potential and make an inclusive shift to everyday inclusion rather than what might be the status quo in your organisation. I think the more you engage with everybody, the better it is.
Looking at what people actually have the potential to deliver, what they can do now, rather than that polish that so often is exclusive because of the limited range of people who exude that polish at a very young age. It's not really about how much you appear as the archetypal business person at the age of 18 or 21, but your skills for the job at hand.
I think to become more inclusive and diverse, the most important thing is to look at where you bring your people in from and how you recruit. It's also really critical to look at how you retain that talent. But we live in an industry where there's a huge digital skills gap. you can't just keep recruiting from the same place and hope to get a different outcome. You've got to look differently, you've got to work differently, and you've got to make sure that you're addressing different audiences to bring in different people.
Well, the quick thing is just being very open, trying to promote it, leadership from the top, across all levels through the business, and really trying to share stories about the benefits that they've done. But there's obviously a lot of policies, we've heard a lot of things today about things that can be done, so even a few bits here today I'm going to take back to our business.
The one big learning everyone's given me is don't just focus on gender. The gender agenda is too narrow, so bizarrely, although it seems to include 100% of everybody, it feels a bit like the blue team versus the pink team. So I think if we want to have an inclusive workforce, then we've got to be inclusive about many dimensions as well, and this isn't a one quick win, silver bullet, top 3 sort of topic. It's about everyone getting engaged and pushing against everything.
Okay, in my opinion, if there's one thing that companies can do to become more diverse and inclusive, it's to really understand possibly the reasons why you're not. I think you have to take some honest looks at yourself and understand that, diversity is not always going to mean half black, half white, half gay, half straight, half male, half female. But you have to understand, what your challenges are in order to affect the kind of progress on diversity and inclusion, because it's not going to be the same for everybody.